that education at all costs must be paid for in Barbados, and we will work to preserve that as the primary platform for social and economic empowerment for people, because a person should not be denied the opportunities of education because of the station of their birth or the circumstances of their family. Secondly, that having been said, that we will have to face difficult decisions. And quite frankly, the framework of our politics does not let us address the fundamental crisis facing this country because of the manner in which we conduct our electoral politics and the manner in which we conduct our Thirdly, that quite frankly, we are going to have the major national discourse of our life as a country once this election is over. And I really regret that this forum came in the middle of an election rather than before, because obviously we have other obligations to attend to, both Donald and myself. But I think that, as I said to Tony earlier today, it is important that Barbadians develop a voice. We have a democracy where people do not speak. And the absence of speech causes people to feel that silence is consent. And until we start to have that kind of discourse, it is going to be very difficult for any government to rule top-down again in this country. There is going to have to be the level of discourse. In other words, it's not only going to be about the vision, it is also going to be about the process by which we reach that vision, which means moving from parish to parish and village to village, building a national consensus. We will never get 100% agreement, but what we want is a consensus about how we must move forward. The reason why I asked you about the BES article, the fundamental problem we have is a major fiscal crisis. We are spending more on the recurring side than we earn. Simple. We are spending more on the equivalent of food and light as opposed to mortgages that we earn. And Barbados has, since 1951, only ever had 10 occasions on which that has happened. The first one was in 1962 to 63, when we spent $600,000 more than we earned on our recurring expenditure. The second one was in 1967 to 68, when we spent, 1974 to 75 in the oil crisis, when we spent $12.2 million more than we earned. The third one was in 1977, when we spent just about $1 million more than we earned. The fourth one was in 1988-89, when we spent about $12 million more than we earned. The fifth one was in 1991-92, and the last 5 years have been the remaining 5 examples: 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012. And in those 5 years, cumulatively, we spent $1.74 billion more than we earned. Now, if that is not a crisis, I do not know what is. And the bottom line is that to simply say that the Labour Party government, I'm not getting into politics now, but to simply say that they all spent their money. It's to deny the fact that from 2008, you earned more revenue than at any period under the Barbados Labour Party cumulatively. So it therefore means that even though you are earning more, you are still spending far, far more, because the rate of expenditure unchanged has continued to grow at a rate that is unsustainable. Now that means, and that brings me back to education, that is why the education debate has been going, because Donald will tell you, like me, that the greatest rate of growth has been in transfers and subsidies in government expenditure. And transfers and subsidies has increased by about 70% in the last 7 years, whereas wages and salaries have increased at a far slower rate, largely because of the wage freeze, effective wage freeze. So what it means when we look at transfers and subsidies, more than 50% goes in the Queen Elizabeth Hospital and the University of the West Indies. Now, what is Barbados' strength? We distinguish ourselves from other people because of the quality of our social capital, the quality of life issues. And therefore, this generation, and I count myself on the cusp of it, and Donald, because we were schooled like temporaries, we have a duty not to erode the social capital that has been the defining characteristic that has put us ahead of the rest of the Caribbean, the rest of the Pacific, the rest of the Commonwealth. But it does mean that we have other difficult decisions. Now, all of us didn't go to school just to read and walk in a straight line. You have to be creative. And there are ways of being creative, but the political party discipline does not admit of that discourse on the eve of an election. So you have a Minister of Finance who in May 2012 tells the country, the Chamber of Commerce, it must change. And these are the organizations, and he calls from the Transport Board to CBC to BNOT and all of them. Then you have the same Minister of Finance, my friend, come in the budget debate, and in the last 3-4 pages of it, list off BNTCL, the airport, the seaport. You understand? Grantley Adams Airport. But now, 3-4 months before an election, it is now the political bogeyman, as if Errol Barrow, Tom Adams, and the rest of them did not send any of you to school, and you cannot read. And I'm saying that it is a form of political charade, for want of a better phrase, that as politicians we need to get away from. Because what we have done is press pause. We press a pause button for 2 years to facilitate an electoral cycle. And you know why it happened? Because all of us and the rest of the society let it happen. Because nobody has come out and said, enough is enough. And you cannot treat the ordinary Barbadians like if we're idiots and that we can't read or write or we can't add. But here's the other problem. Small societies cause people to be frightened of victimization. But at the end of the day, if Basu was frightened of victimization, we wouldn't be here today. If the people in 1947 was frightened of victimization, Israel Love and Clementine and the rest of them, whose names we still do not know and honor, would not be frightened. If they were frightened, we wouldn't be here today. And I'm saying to you that the essence of education, presumed, I think, Charlotte, is not only formal education. It is non-formal education. And that the biggest mission of our generation is to deal with this, to root ourselves through an understanding of who we are, to root ourselves through a confidence. Donald was perfectly correct when he came in talking about entrepreneurship, that we have an educational system that effectively tells you, keep quiet when you're in a formal room. School, classroom, workplace, church. You take the same people and put them outside here, how rambunctious they become, how creative they become. And I can tell you as Minister of Education, that is something that's going to take a generational change. It's not going to happen overnight, because you're changing the culture of a people. And Nigel Harper is here, and he will know that in truth and in fact, to me, the most important ministry in this country is not education, but it's culture. Because it deals, culture is non-formal education. And culture tells us to be able to value who we are as a people and to root. We have a private sector, for example, that is frightened for stepping outside a traditional private sector, may I say, of the ambit of merchant community, plantocracy, anything that is easy and that is protected. Once you start talking about a knowledge and creative economy, once you start talking about vendors, who takes the most risk in this country? Who takes more risk than vendors? Vendors get up every morning, rain, sun, whatever, and got to go out night and play the trade. And yet tens of thousands of Barbadians have been raised through vendors earning and selling the wares. But vendors have more capacity for risk-taking in this country than the traditional private sector. And when we talk about entrepreneurs, we ignore the fact that vendors are entrepreneurs. It's not only people at a certain level with ideas. So I'm also saying to you, why isn't the Barbados Vendors Association a member of the Private Sector Association of Barbados? Why 20 years ago when MAD was running Ruru, remember that dongle on Broad Street? And I was working for them and I said, well, why y'all don't belong to the Chamber of Commerce? Well, that for us. But who it for? You know it is to have a store on Broad Street? Whoever in for them, who is it for? Then I suddenly hear that Barbadians are not shareholders. There are over 150,000 shareholders in Barbados in the credit union movement. They're not depositors, they are shareholders. So that everything that we need, we already have the experience, but we don't validate it. We don't validate it. We don't validate the fact that we are shareholders. We may need to carry the credit union movement to another level and create unit trusts for greater investment in a wider range of companies. We don't validate the fact that we are entrepreneurs. Every street corner in Barbados got people selling legal and illegal. Am I telling a lie? No. So how all of a sudden they're not entrepreneurs? And I'm saying to you that if we do not, as God is my witness, if we do not bring about a paradigm shift in this country, and if you, political parties got how much, Dom? 10,000 in the Dems, 10,000 in the Bs. And you got over 220,000 voting. And the other 200,000, the other 200,000. 5,000 what? They common. It might actually be 7. Because that is the nature of political activity. But there are another 200,000 people who say nothing. And who in a drawing room, in a rum shop, in a sports ground, will tell you ignorance going on. I'm quarreling. But you say nothing and you do nothing. And I'm saying to you, as God is my witness, I'm pleading. I'm pleading. Because I really believe that Barbados is on the precipice now. And the country that I feel proud to belong to has become lost. I don't feel it is irreparable. But there's too much brilliance and creativity in this country, in every sphere of activity. But the one thing we are lacking is the courage to stand up and to be convicted to what you believe in, to show your convictions. And unless that happens, we are going to have a level of gentle erosion until it becomes a little more evident. You ever see water coming down a hill? And it starts, and then eventually, all of a sudden, one day you realize how deep the hole is. And that is exactly what is happening. And Donald, in his heart of hearts, he knows what I'm talking about too. And that's what makes the whole thing so nonsensical. Okay? Because neither side will want to take, because at the end of the day, he is not in a position to say, do this or do that, because we're bound by a collective. And I accept that. But I'm saying to you that the only way the collective is going to respond. You ever wonder how political parties have democratized the country but not democratized themselves? And I also say to you that you too cannot treat political parties as a pariah, because political parties at their height of greatest influence in the Caribbean, not Barbados alone, always at best reflects the entire society, black and white, rich, middle class and poor, Jews and Gentiles. You understand? Men and women. And what has happened is that people have retreated from active political participation. Barbados is perhaps one of the last countries to really suffer from the MDC. Jamaica suffered from the last 20, 30 years. Trinidad is suffering, as Peter will tell you. We need more of you to become active politically, not necessarily only in parties, but active politically and be masters of your own fate collectively as a country. And unless those things happen, then we are going to inch. And what happens in the meantime? Technology allows countries to leapfrog, and leapfrog, and leapfrog, and leapfrog. And all of a sudden, the country like Jamaica was the #1 developing country in the world in 1970, and then spent 40 years now, 40 years, catching up, trying to avert being a highly indebted poor country. Guyana, at the same year, Barbados became independent in February of that year. Guyana was adjudged to have better development opportunities than Singapore. Singapore is now the icon of the world in terms of island states and entrepreneurs. And Guyana spent most of its time for the last 47 years as a highly indebted poor country. Barbados has no divine right to prosperity. And the prosperity we maintain or gain comes from us working day by day, hour by hour, together. And there's no sense cursing nobody in this election till their kingdom come, because in order to build on the 22nd of February, it is going to need all Barbadians on deck. And if you curse a man into oblivion, you cannot expect him to hold your hand and come and help build this country. So I hope we have another encounter. I hope it is a bipartisan encounter like tonight, but unfortunately, we have been called away to other things. And I really do hope that this will remain as an active forum and other things will come out of it. Thank you.